welcome to the Sports Guys, another edition of Weekend Update, another incredible weekend of sports. As you can see behind me, the World Series came to a conclusion. We'll get deep into that, how the Dodgers did it. And we'll talk about the college games from this weekend, which were incredible. We'll talk about the NFL. There's some great games that happened today. How you doing, Ravi?
Really good, thanks. Having a good weekend.
It's good. Yeah, we had another great weekend at the beach. 2 weekends in a row now. I'm getting a little spoiled. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And watching football on the beach with you and taking notes for the podcast. And that was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was fun. I got sand on my notes right now.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah, I had to brush a little bit of sand off.
What are the big stories out of the weekend that hit you coming into Monday?
Oh, wow. The World Series was huge. I think Clemson losing to Louisville was a big one. The Ohio State-Penn State matchup was just a slugfest. Oregon looks amazing.
Georgia took care of business, and we had a bunch of upsets we got to talk about. It was kind of upset Saturday.
I think that's right. This was upset weekend, actually, in college.
Yeah, we'll get into all those things. Did it surprise you at all that the World Series didn't go to 6 or 7 games?
No, but I was hoping for it, and it just didn't happen. But it was star-studded and a lot of action, and I think it was a good series. It wasn't legendary, but it was good.
Yeah, I mean, their second World Series in 5 years. Clearly, they've got a really great process and system now.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
you're going to get into that a little bit about how the Dodgers way and how it's starting to really pervade now. And obviously, they also have one of the biggest payrolls. We're going to get into that as well. We're going to look at all the big payrolls in baseball and talk about what kind of advantage these top 5 teams have over the other clubs, including my Orioles, who are at $55 million. And have already vowed to spend quite a bit of money next year to try to get better. So we'll see if some of the other clubs can come up. But, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Astros, all the big teams that spend the money are always going to be there, it seems like. So.
Yeah. I think the Dodgers are really the gold standard in terms of how you build your team. And they really need to be copied if you intend on putting together a program that can compete every year.
No question. Well, let's go take a look at our material and we'll talk through it. All right, so this is our weekend update, November 4th, 2024. We're 1 day away from Election Day, so if you haven't voted yet, it's not too late. Get to your voting place near your house and get your civic duty done. You can see some of the epic pictures I've got here. The first one is the one there on the left. That's the parade that they had for the Dodgers after the World Series. They had that on Thursday in downtown Los Angeles, and they had 600,000 fans show up on this parade route, which is, I think it was an all-time record. They really love the Dodgers in that town. And you can see all the players really enjoying it in the open-air buses. So that was a really cool, epic photo. And then other one there is the Georgia Bulldogs just continue to take control. They played a really good Florida team who gave them a good battle for a half. But they kind of took control in the second half and clearly were the better team. And I like them as one of the top 4 teams in the country, of course. And then Jaden Daniels just keeps winning, sitting at 7-2 now. He's won 6 of his last 7 games as a rookie, feeling a lot like C.J. Stroud last year, maybe even a little better than C.J. Stroud last year.
He's better.
Which I didn't think that was possible to have a kind of 2 rookies in a row that were the number 2 picks in the draft to be this good. But any initial thoughts about any of these 3 epic photos?
I mean, it's pretty cool. LA's a town that's used to having a big show, and they had a good old time there. Very incredible season for them. Georgia, I think, is the best team in the country. Not by a lot, and not that they can't get beaten on a given week, but I think they are the most talented team. They've really had only one bad half of football this year, and they paid a price for it, but they are not to be trifled with. Even when they don't play great, they're still kind of controlling the game. And Jaden Daniels is amazing. There are reports that agents are calling the Commanders, trying to make deals so that their player can go to the Commanders because they want to play with Jaden Daniels. And they heard that the culture has changed so much there. So that's an incredible fact that the destination has changed so much in such a short period of time, basically getting one player and then changing over the way everyone's operating in the building.
Does that amaze you the way it does to me? I mean, they had so much stink on that program for 30 years. Nobody wanted to touch it. People couldn't wait to get out of there. And then one player comes in, has them 7-2, leading the conference. and all of a sudden now everybody is looking at Washington as a destination place for their free agency. Pretty incredible.
I think it's a perfect example of when you make a change, you just fire everybody and start over. And you still got some good players in the building. And then you bring in a star that has charisma and has the it factor, and you can change your fortunes really quickly. So I think that's a good example for other teams who are floundering in either mediocrity or a toxic culture. You can flip it around really fast if you just make a couple of big moves. So
I think it's the combination of him, and also, of course, they got a real GM, which they didn't have for a lot of years, and went and got the assistant GM from the 49ers, which is a really good hire. And then, of course, they go get Dan Quinn, who's got, what used to be a pathetic defense for 10 years. Now the defense is actually playing pretty stout. And those three combinations together, along with this quarterback who's going to be their, face of their franchise for the next 10 to 15 years.
I think you haven't felt this much energy around the Commanders in a long time. Dan Quinn is very calm, but he brings an energy. He kind of reminds me of an older Dan Campbell. He's kind of, he gets pumped up, and then you add the energy that the offense is bringing in, and it's pumping up the defense. They're playing complementary football.
You also
Jaden Daniels is very charismatic.
You don't see this skill set very often, where the guy can run like Lamar Jackson and he can throw like Josh Allen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true.
You don't see that very often, where he has both skill sets.
It's true.
I don't know. I don't know how good what is his ceiling? I don't know.
He's processing information at a very fast rate for a rookie. He's got incredible skills. He's got intangibles. He's likable. He says all the right things. He does all the right things.
He's got leadership already at 22.
Yeah.
In the locker room. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a look at the World Series.
The veterans talk about him like they're so glad to be playing with him.
That's right. Let's take a look at this World Series and break it down here. So you got Freddie Freeman wins the MVP. You have in this series, what amazed me was the top two best players for the Dodgers didn't have good series, and Ohtani pretty much had like a nightmarish series. It was maybe his worst series in the entire season.
Yeah.
He just striking out, not getting guys over. And then this guy comes in, their third best player, who they had picked up from the Braves 2 years ago. And he just dominates and wins the MVP. So what does that say about how deep the Dodgers are?
Well, I mean, first of all, Freeman was brought in for 6 year, $160 million. So it's a decent contract. He was one of their best players, but clearly he went to superstar status with the kind of performance he had this whole series. The story of the Dodgers is that usually most teams either go for a bunch of big name stars, and then they have really low end other players, or they have not very many stars and just like a decent roster all the way across, but they don't have that guy that can really make a difference. The Dodgers have both, and the way they build their team is so amazing. They believe every single person in the building matters, and it's not just hyperbole. They give respect and importance to the secretary, the bad boy. I mean, everyone. every single person has value, and they're always assessing value. They're always looking to upgrade places, to add pieces. They are the most, if not the most, every year, definitely at the top of teams that are looking at the waiver wire. They're also constantly analyzing rookies and first year players coming in, looking for talent all over the league. And then they have, they're notorious for this thing called WAR, which is wins above replacement. And I think this is really the secret for them on getting talented players in every position. Basically, wins above replacement is every player gets graded on if you were to replace them with a minor league player, how many more wins does this player provide over the minor league player at a very low, if no, like almost no salary? And so what they do is they assess how much impact each player is making, and then each position by position, the WAR can vary. For instance, first base would have a lower WAR scoring than shortstop, because the shortstop is in there mostly for defense. And if you were to lose your starter, who actually is good on offense too, the drop off would be larger than a first baseman who's traditionally going to be a big hitter. So a big hitter first baseman replaced with another first baseman, probably going to be a big hitter also. So they're saying that position by position, you can definitely, there's higher scoring for some over others. So what they do is this really complicated series of assessing their team, and they make sure that they are talented all the way up and down the roster. They have value. They look for value everywhere. And so deep in their bullpen, they have a legendary bullpen because they're able to assess pitchers. And really, there's a slightly different metric for judging pitchers, but basically the value of each pitcher is so important for the Dodgers' success.
So you're
And
saying the WAR metric or the WAR value that you're talking about is the way that they stack their entire organization.
yes,
Their lineup top to bottom to make sure they have depth at every single position, and
depth.
then even down to like the bat guy and the
Yeah.
trainer, and everybody
And
is part of this.
the minor leagues, they're looking at them the same way. So they're bringing guys up. They were able to play 29 players on their roster, and almost all of them contributed, and that's kind of unheard of. Most other teams are relying on their 3 stars who bat first, third, fourth, and fifth. Maybe they're 4 stars, and then when you get past that part of the lineup, you can kind of breathe a sigh of relief, and you get past the team starter, who's usually some star like Garrett Cole or somebody like that. And then the bullpen, it all falls apart on most teams.
That's right.
The Dodgers are not built like that whatsoever. They're not relying on any one person, and they're all not even a couple of people. They're relying all the way up and down their lineup. They're bringing in guys off the bench and putting them in left field and second base and wherever. They're bringing in nonstop pitchers. They're bringing in rookies. I mean, the guy who they had a rookie starting in Game 4, Kasperius, and he started Game 4. He had only had 3 big league appearances before that start. So that's crazy. He is a rookie, but they know him so well. They know his value. They felt comfortable rolling him out there. So,
Well, and this analysis you're talking about, the WAR analysis, is why this team could have their top 2 players not have a good series, and they could still win
correct.
the World Series in 5 games.
That's right. That's right. Whereas most other teams, the Yankees are special because they have more than 2 good players. So they have a
Sure.
heavy loaded roster, but they don't have the depth or the width. They don't have the bullpen. They don't have the bottom of the lineup.
That's
So
right.
the better team won, even though the Yankees, that middle part of their lineup was just savage.
And Freddie Freeman was just fantastic from
Yeah, I mean,
beginning
he
of the
put on a
year.
legendary performance,
He was just
grand
fantastic.
slams, winning games, hitting home runs in every single game. He was breaking so many records.
I love when
He
he hit
had
that grand slam.
incredible.
Did you see his face? He looked like a little kid, like
Yeah,
that. Cause he'd been dreaming about this his whole life,
yep.
like because every little kid when they're 8 playing baseball, like they want to hit a grand slam
He
in the
said
World
he
Series.
said when he went up to the plate, he wasn't feeling nervous.
Mm,
He just felt relaxed and he was just attacking. There was nobody even close. Um,
mm-hmm.
he's one of the best
True,
MVPs I've seen in a World Series in my life.
I agree. So next one is Judge and Otani both struggled. Any theories about why that would be? Is this just the fact that both coaching staffs are really good and they game plan around these guys, kind of like football, where you game plan around people?
Yeah,
Is it
I
something
think
as simple as that, or what, or is it because you have Mr. October, right? Reggie Jackson comes to the plate and he delivers. You have Kirk Gibson deliver for the Dodgers. You've got these legendary players who step up, and these guys just didn't. And if you would ask them privately, they'd say this isn't the World Series they wanted. Right?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of pressure on these guys. In addition to that, I think they pitched them a little differently, and sometimes you got to let it fly. And you're not, baseball is a game of series and months and all that. Very few times in baseball does one game matter. And when you get to the playoffs, it's just different.
Sometimes you get hot and sometimes you get cold, and these two got
Yeah,
cold at the wrong. Yeah.
all season long, players are going up and down, cold, hot. And
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with them. It's just part of what happens. And both their best players got cold right in the tail end of the playoffs. So
Mm-hmm.
that was
Yeah.
unfortunate for their teams. I think the Dodgers had more good players on their entire roster, and so they found a way to get this done.
I
And
think got cold, and
get
also they
done.
pitched around these two guys. I mean, they definitely game planned for these two guys. They
Yeah,
were not going to let them beat them.
right.
That's what it looked like to me.
Which I think is why Juan Carlos Stanton had such a good
Yes,
playoffs, not just World Series. But I
agreed.
think when you come behind Judge and they've just pitched around him or they didn't give him anything to hit, there was more pressure on the pitcher at that point because now
Mhm,
Judge is on base or he used all his best pitches on Judge or whatever. And
mhm.
Stanton was crushing the ball. So,
Right. That's right.
you know,
So next one is the Dodgers bullpen was lights out, and I would say that if Freddie Freeman had not been the MVP, the Dodgers bullpen would have been the MVP as a
yeah,
collective because these guys, I mean, these 8 guys were just unbelievable. I mean, if they got any
unbelievable.
kind of lead, they got any kind of lead in the first of the 8th inning, it was over. You basically the Yankees had 7 innings to hit. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
The
again,
manager,
like you talked about the WAR analysis, they must have used it on this bullpen because they were just
absolutely.
all interchangeable.
They were interchangeable. Dave Roberts used them. He went on gut feel. He knew each of his guys, what he could do. He probably knew who had a good night's sleep last night. Like he kind of he knows his team really well, and he knows
Yeah.
what they can do and what their limitations are. And he did a phenomenal job of using guys. There were actually a lot of people questioning his pitching decisions throughout
Hmm.
the playoffs, and
Hmm.
he was just shutting down the criticisms. He was
He
going with his gut at times, and it really worked well.
stuck to his plan. In the
Yeah.
4 games they won, they essentially had either a 1 or 2 run lead going into the 8th inning in all of them and shut them all down. It was
Hmm.
over. And then in the 1 game they lost, of course, the Yankees got their bats going and won
Yeah, I
11 to
mean
4.
that's going to happen. The Yankees have such a great lineup, especially at the top, that they're going to have games like that. So there's nothing you can do. In fact, he kind of felt that and didn't even use his bullpen. He
Hmm.
just let his guy go out there and get smacked around after
Well, he let the
they
one guy
started
get
to get
shelled.
an insurmountable
Yeah,
lead,
he let him
and
get
he let
shelled.
the
Yeah.
bullpen stay fresh. So it was smart.
Mhm. So the next thing we want to look at is the payrolls. We talked about this earlier in the program. Mets have the top payroll in baseball with 305 million. Yankees at 303, Dodgers 249 at third, Phillies, Astros, Rangers, Blue Jays, all the way down to the Giants. You can see these teams are kind of perennial competitors in the playoffs all the time, and they have the big payrolls. I mentioned the Orioles had won their division last year, and this year almost won it with a $55 million payroll. So, any thoughts about this? Should there be a salary cap maybe in baseball? It just feels
Oh,
like
yeah. No
kind of an
question.
unfair system, you know?
No question. If you look at it, all the top guys, in the top 10, what, 7 of them were in the playoffs? You can't
Mhm.
you just buy your way into the playoffs, and that's not very interesting, you know?
Mhm.
I don't think that's good for the game.
Yeah, I mean, if
If
the
you're a
Dodgers
Yankees
and
fan, it's
Yankees win
great,
it
but
every year,
you know what it forces you to do? It forces you to have a regional sport instead of a national one.
Mhm.
You know, you you gravitate towards the team in your region that has a big payroll, and then you love them, whether it's the Braves in the Southeast or the Yankees in the Northeast or whatever, or the Dodgers. You gravitate towards the teams that have the big payroll, and then that's it. You know, it's not the same thing as being in a small town like Green Bay, Wisconsin, and you're rooting for the Packers.
The
And
best story in baseball in the playoffs this year was when the Tigers took out the Astros in round one,
Mhm.
and the Tigers had the same payroll as one player for the Astros,
Yeah,
one of their main pitchers.
it doesn't
They had
happen
like
much, but it happens sometimes.
it's incredible. They had a $30 million payroll, and they beat the Astros in the first round. So I don't know. It just feels like this is not sustainable if baseball really wants to grow and give everybody a chance and have every city feel like they've got a chance every year
Well, that's the problem. You don't have a chance if you're at the bottom. You have a tiny chance of being able to pull off that kind of a upset, but
for one round.
for one round. But you're
Then you got
not going
thrown
to
out.
compete all the way through. And the beautiful part of what the NFL does now is every team thinks they have a chance, at least in the beginning, through
Mhm,
week 5 or so, and then reality starts to set in. And if you're a
mhm,
Raiders fan, you know you're done. If you're a Dolphins fan, you know right by now you're done. But you start the season believing, loving your team, excited about your couple of draft picks. You know, salary caps are limiting the good teams from always being good. They got to
mhm.
fight to stay up there. Salary
I
cap's a
mean,
good thing. It creates parity.
the college system, they're now talking about a salary cap in college football. And
Mhm.
the goal there is to have this wonderful season we've had this year continue by keeping the talent spread out. And the way you do that is the salary cap so that
Mhm.
nobody can outspend the others. Um, so
They need
I'm a
it
big
so
fan.
badly in baseball. They really
They need
do.
it more. They do. So the most insane thing I think I've seen in many, many years is Will Smith has won the World Series 5 years in a row. Started with the Dodgers in 2020, then, and these were all 1 year contracts. Okay. And by the way, he's not like the most important player. That's what's so weird. So he goes
Mm.
to the Braves the next year in 2021, wins it with them. And by the way, Freddie Freeman was on that team. Freddie Freeman won a ring. Then he goes to the Astros in 2022, wins it with them, goes to the Rangers, wins it last year. And then
Mm.
this year is on the Dodgers. And they put this into a computer simulation the other day, and they said it would be in effect the same percentage chance as winning like a $25 million lottery ticket
It's
of
crazy.
doing this to win 5 in a row with 5 different teams. I mean, the chances are just so low. What do you think of this? I mean, this is crazy.
It's just one of those spectacular coincidences.
He has 5 rings, Rob.
I know. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame. And no one's ever heard of him.
And he's like a role player. He like barely plays. It's just crazy. Whoever gets him next year, they're going to be competing for him. The Mets need to get him or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they'll win the World Series. I mean, I've never seen a string like that before. That's crazy in any
Talk about
sport.
giving your fans some hope. We just signed Will Smith.
Did you notice like in each of these pictures he has like the mask on doing the champagne. Then last year with the Rangers, he's doing their beer and he's just oh man,
It's wild.
he's living a charmed life.
Mm-hmm.
So the second one there is the Yankees just put in a bronze statue to highlight this Austin guy who you said that Gronk actually knows.
Oh, it was so crazy.
And his crazy play in this World Series against the Dodgers. They're putting this permanent statue in to celebrate his contributions, quote unquote,
You have
of
to
Yankee
check it
fans.
out. They were interviewing Gronk live on television, and they showed him the replay, and Gronk just jaw fell open. He goes, "Oh my God, I know that guy." And the commentator said, "Stop! You do not know that guy." He said, "Yeah, I know him. He went to the University of Arizona with me. He played on the hockey team, and those guys were a bunch of animals." And he always talked about how much he loved the Yankees, and he said, that they protect the wall. And so it was just funny. It's so funny how Gronk knew
But should
him.
they be doing a
He was an
statue
animal.
to somebody when they're doing an
No,
illegal play and they're getting kicked out of the stadium? I don't
no,
know.
no, no,
It's a little
no. The
weird.
statue is crazy. No, they shouldn't make a statue of him.
I mean, it's
Listen,
kind of
people
a little
copy stuff. Okay, look at later. We'll talk about it. But Clemson fans were upset, so they're throwing water bottles. Why? Because it happened 2 weeks ago. They
and
were
it delayed the
upset.
game. It delayed the game and it
Yeah.
let the rest go look at it again. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And
Mhm.
then they saw that that they had gotten the call wrong. So
Mhm.
yeah, people copy bad behavior, and you don't want to encourage it. So
That was
I
the
think
Texas fan. Texas fans did it first. Yeah.
yes,
The Texas
yes.
Georgia game. Mhm.
The strange thing there was they had a good point without me justifying them doing that. It was correct that the refs had gotten the call wrong, but unfortunately now there's a precedent set there, and so I'm afraid if you make statues celebrating somebody who did that, you're going to have copiers.
This is saluting the contributions of Yankee fans during live games. Essentially, they're telling these people this is a good thing when they're
Yeah,
interfering with the play and it's illegal. I just don't get that. But I
yeah,
do, but I did. Part of me kind of chuckled because I think it's a little funny, but part of me is like, you shouldn't be encouraging something that's illegal in the sport. Like that doesn't
it's
make
funny
sense.
until the point where somebody copies it, and then it's not funny anymore because you realize it wasn't
What if it
funny then.
cost them the World Series? I mean, like it could be a
Right.
big play where it's like Game
It happened to the
7.
Marlins.
Yeah,
The Marlins
exactly.
outfielder one time went to go catch a ball, and the guy reached way down in the thing and caught it with his hat, I think it was.
Hmm.
And it was at a pivotal point in game 6 or something like that, and the Marlins were winning. The Marlins
Hmm.
should have won that, and they lost it.
Hmm.
So it can happen where it
I
swings
don't
a
know.
game.
I think the Yankees fans are a little crazy, but that's just me. Let's take a look at the big headlines from college football from this past weekend. Another just epic weekend. We called it Upset
Incredible.
Saturday. We had 5 major upsets, and we'll talk about each of them. So we call
Yeah.
it the Upset Alert weekend. Upset Alert. First one is Texas A&M's football postseason hopes take a hit with a road loss at South Carolina, and they played it in Columbia. And coming into this game, I mean, A&M was just riding high. They had been blasting people. They had a couple really big wins, including LSU, and then they just lay a complete egg yesterday. Any thoughts about this one?
I felt a little bit like Texas A&M was on shaky ground. They were winning, but they don't have a settled quarterback position. And I think that's a dangerous place to be because championship teams know who their quarterback is.
Mm-hmm.
But they have an incredible coach. They have a really good defense. They've been playing great. Nothing to take away from them. I felt like they were gonna run into a buzzsaw at some point because I think it's always shaky when you have a throwing quarterback who's not playing well, and then you have a running quarterback who comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little nervous about A&M. I didn't feel like that quarterback position was settled enough for them to make a run like they're going to need to do if they wanted to. They had visions of.
But I mean, I could see a 3-point loss in Columbia because Columbia, South Carolina is a pretty good team, but 44-20. I mean, Mike
Yeah,
Elko's a
I
really
mean,
good coach.
Elko's an amazing coach. First of all, I think South Carolina is a very good team. They've played tough this year. They got some losses, but they're a really good team. I think that their
Shane Beamer
quarterback,
is also a very good coach, by the way.
Beamer's a good coach. They had some incredible plays from their top players. Guys, running back getting 92 yards receiving,
Well,
plus
they had those.
144 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns.
You remember they had those couple of wheel routes they threw for touchdowns. Those little wheel routes the running back took to the house.
They had multiple guys getting touchdowns and over 100 yards rushing. When you have more than 100-yard rusher, you're really getting it done. And then a guy named Joshua Simon had 132 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. I mean, they were lighting it up on offense.
It's true.
They had 26 first downs to A&M's 19.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I thought Texas A&M was cruising to the playoff, to be quite honest, or at least to the SEC championship game, and they really stumbled on this one. And for me, it was inexplicable. Maybe you saw it coming with the quarterback situation, but
I saw it coming, but not this game necessarily. I thought they were going to run into problems when it was the conference championship or something like that.
Georgia or Texas.
Yeah. One of those guys was going to really whip up on them because I think their quarterback play is a little shaky. But I was surprised at their defense in this game. They had 0 sacks. They did have a fumble recovery, but they weren't as stout. They just gave up all kinds of offense to South Carolina.
So, it was a stunner. It was a stunner for me. I don't know.
It wasn't a stunner for me, but it was a pretty decisive victory.
Next one is Miami shines in the second half to take down Duke. Duke really played them tough in the first half and showed that they're a quality program. And we knew that because Duke came in 6-1. Thought they would give them a good game. They did. And then after halftime, Miami made a bunch of adjustments. Their athleticism showed up. Cam Ward went off. And, you had Restrepo and all these guys. Yeah. And they just they show that they're a top 5 team and Duke is not. So any thoughts about this second half and the 59 points?
I think they're vulnerable to a really good team because their defense is limited. But Cam Ward is probably the best quarterback in the country along with Shedeur Sanders, I think. And
me too.
They have Restrepo, who's been leading the country most of the year in receiving, scoring. He's a touchdown machine. And they just
every time he throws it to him, he goes to the house. It's crazy.
Yeah. And the defense actually showed up in this game decently for Miami. So they were able to hang in there while Duke was giving it to them. And then they kind of tightened up and brought it home with.
It is definitely still their weakness, though. I mean, Duke was kind of scoring at will on them in the first half, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a tale of 2 halves.
Definitely their weakness.
There was no domination in the first half. If there was any, it was Duke. And then Miami took over. And their defense held decently.
I will say in the weeks that they were winning like 52-45 against Louisville, some of those games, I really thought they were just skating on thin ice. But the last 2 weeks, they've really kind of won going away, looking more like a top 5 team. Yeah.
I was actually impressed for the first time with Miami's defense. Then they had 3 interceptions and a fumble recovery, and they had some pressure. So they finally showed some flash a little bit.
Don't you think Duke is headed in the right direction, though, as a program? It just feels like they're kind of on the rise.
Yeah, I think they've been pointed in the right direction for several years now. Elko and
they're not a joke anymore.
I think it started with Daniel Jones.
They laugh at the ACC, but there's a couple of programs that are like that. Like Duke's on the rise, Pitt's on the rise, SMU. UNC has won 3 in a row, and they're starting to close strong. Obviously, you got Miami, you got Clemson. I don't know. I think ACC is coming on at the end of the season.
I want to believe that, but I don't.
The next one is Jackson Dart And a record night, he powers Ole Miss to a 63-31 blowout of Arkansas. It was a really good team. But they just were completely overmatched against this guy who's just having a record year for Ole Miss. Is clearly going to be a top first-round pick. What are your thoughts about Ole Miss?
First of all, Arkansas is really hard to play at home.
Mm-hmm.
They're tough in Arkansas. So scoring 63 points is amazing. Jackson Dart was 25 of 31, 515 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a QBR of 98.3. He also had 47 yards rushing. So he was a dual threat. He was managed every scenario. Ole Miss had 694 yards versus 492 for Arkansas. They just whipsawed him.
And Jackson had the one receiver who had a career day too.
Yeah, Jordan Watkins. He had 254 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns. I don't think I've ever heard a receiver have that much ever. I can't think of one.
I think he's found his favorite receiver.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't want to play Ole Miss right now. They're tough.
I know.
They're scoring a lot of points. Next one is Georgia beats Florida in the cocktail party. Of course, this is called the greatest outdoor cocktail party. In Jacksonville, Florida, they play it every year in a neutral site. 34-20. You've got about 100,000 fans that start about 9 in the morning, drinking all kinds of different cocktails and making ribs on grills and just having a great time. Florida played them tough in the first half, but Georgia kind of won going away and took over and imposed their will in the second half. Any thoughts on that one?
I think Beck has been disappointing.
I agree.
I think they should have whipsawed him, and they dominated him a little bit overall, but his 3 interceptions really hold this team back. And he's been throwing multiple interceptions in a bunch of games this year, and I really think he's not the guy for the national championship run they need.
They're really winning on defense is what's happening.
They're winning on defense. You know, they're winning the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They're blasting the defensive line with their offensive hogs, and they are really putting pressure on defensively. So
you said you think Georgia's the best team in the country, but is that?
But they're flawed. They're flawed at the quarterback position.
Are they the best team in the country, or is Oregon the best team in the country because they have the best quarterback right now?
I think Georgia has the most offensive, or the most players that are going to be in the NFL beside Ohio State.
They're probably the 2 best lines in football on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
But they have a quarterback who's holding them back. That's what you're saying.
Correct. And Georgia's healthy.
Yeah.
Georgia's healthy where some of the better teams aren't. Ohio State's struggling with injuries. Penn State, Notre Dame's had a few. The other good teams are banged up a little bit, and Georgia's healthy, so they're blasting people.
I will say Etienne's having a pretty good season for Georgia, so they're able to run the ball, which is nice.
They are.
I don't know. You're right. They're flawed, and is there any team that's not flawed this year? Probably not, even in the top 5.
People are starting to get a sense that Oregon is not flawed, and they might be right. I still think the best team in the country is Georgia, and Ohio State and Oregon are 2 and 3 in some order. And I still like Alabama. And Tennessee's still up there. And then you got to start thinking Miami can outscore some people. So they're a dangerous team. So,
yeah. Well, we're going to see here with Georgia because they're going to continue to play good teams every week because they're in the SEC. See if they can keep it together. But, yeah, I think their quarterback is an issue. Next one is, can Colorado make the college football playoff? How Iowa State and Kansas State's losses open the door for the Buffaloes. Because both of them lost in the same weekend. So does it open the door enough for Colorado to maybe slip in there, or is it going to definitely be BYU?
It's hard to say. I think one of two things are going to happen: Colorado or BYU.
Okay.
We'll see.
So Colorado's sitting with 2 losses, Iowa State, Kansas State both with 1 loss, and then BYU's undefeated. So that's kind of the hierarchy right now. So I still think Colorado's looking in from the outside.
I agree.
But
I think BYU should be in the driver's seat.
But both of these losses did help Colorado with a little glimmer of hope, is what I would say. Still unlikely, but glimmer of hope that they could have had both of these guys lose in the same weekend. And they're playing well enough right now. I have to say, I was very skeptical about Colorado this year because I know how many people they lose in the portal and how many people they gain in the portal. And I didn't think that they could put the chemistry together as fast as they have. But they're playing really good football. And they're going to be there at the end, I think. We shall see.
Yeah. I mean, they got the quarterback play. They have a defense that has improved a lot over last year. Offensive line that's improved a lot over last year. They just have a couple really talented players that carry the load.
And you can't count Iowa State or Kansas State out either. I mean, they're both still in the mix. So I don't know who's going to come out of that division, but certainly BYU's in the catbird seat right now. We'll see.
BYU looks good, and they're sitting in a good spot.
So next one is Penn State's fans are getting a little restless. Okay, James Franklin is now 0-8 against Ohio State. This was the year everyone was saying they were 3, Ohio State was 4. They were coming into Happy Valley. Penn State had the best team they've had in a long time. They've got a good quarterback, a good offensive line, solid defense. And if, the rumors were before the game, if he can't get it done this year, then when can he ever get it done? It feels a lot like the days where Ohio State was losing, or actually when Michigan was losing to Ohio State every year. And finally, Jim Harbaugh came in and turned that around. So what are your thoughts about James Franklin? Is he the long-term solution for Penn State? Are they going to move on from him, try to get a big-time name?
Well, I don't. They can't move on from. They can't move on from him. His contract's so huge.
Right. It's very complicated. It's very complicated.
They can't move on from him, so that's not even an option.
What can they do to break this logjam? Because
they need to get a little more talent on the offensive side of the ball. I don't know if they need to shake up the coaching staff a little. Not Franklin, but some pieces of the offense seem like they misfire sometimes, and they win on defense, and they win kind of ugly, close, low-scoring games. And that's kind of what this was. We knew going into this game that both teams had banged-up offensive lines, and therefore I said this is going to be a wild game, and it's going to be very defensive. The defenses are going to dominate, and that's what happened. If you think about it, 20-13 is pretty low scoring. And if the
but doesn't it feel like he's going to have to get over the hump eventually? He just has to. I mean, the Penn State fans are not going to take it forever. Just sitting there at number 3.
I don't know. I think they do kind of take it. They do kind of have to accept that they're that next tier. Michigan jumped over them, and we're up there with Ohio State. And I think Penn State's the next team. I just don't,
Well, I just can't imagine he's sitting at 0-8. He must lose sleep over it. He must. I mean, I will say, I'll give him credit. He took total responsibility in the press conference. He's like, this is on me. I'm the one who has to have my team prepared to beat a great team like that. And we didn't get it done for the 8th year in a row. And only person you can look at is me. And so I was impressed with that.
I was impressed with Ohio State's corners and defensive line. That's a really legitimate defense. Everyone knows they have, Ferrari type pieces on offense. Some of the best receivers in the country.
Penn State has a good offense. They actually have a good offense, and their quarterback's pretty good. But when they play a defense that good, I just think they look ineffective.
Offensively, I'm hearing that there's a good chance that 2 receivers and 2 running backs go in the first round
Hmm.
from Ohio State. That's amazing.
I know. There's no doubt
So,
about
Penn State's D trying to hang with that, but their defense is loaded with talent too. So
it. Hmm.
I've heard frequently this year that the best roster in college football is Ohio State.
Hmm.
So Penn State didn't embarrass themselves. They just ran into a team that has so much talent on it that
I mean,
you
just
know,
for those fans, I feel bad for the fans because they just never get over the hump year
yeah.
after year after year. So the next one is number 13 Indiana dominates Michigan State and improves to 9-0. And you and I've talked about it. No matter what happens from here on out for Indiana, whether they win or lose, this is maybe the greatest story this year in college football.
Yeah.
This team that was the basement of the Big Ten for 20 years is all of a sudden really good and knocking on the door of the playoff.
There are a few teams this year that I'm really excited about sort of following and watching, keeping an eye on. Indiana and the service academies.
Mhm.
Navy and Army have been really a treat to watch
Mhm.
and to cover and to sort of keep an eye on. And even though when they run into the real big time programs, they're probably going to get smashed. I don't think that's going to be the case with Indiana. But
Although I'll
we haven't
notice,
seen them play too many good teams. But Ohio State is coming in 2 weeks, so we'll see.
yeah, yeah, no, Ohio State's a different level. But did you notice though that these teams they're dominating? They're not just beating; they're
Yeah,
dominating.
yeah,
These are legendary Big Ten programs like Michigan State that
I know.
they're absolutely like Indiana's in a different class from Michigan State now. It's really pretty wild to watch.
They're going into a game where they're favored by 8 points, and they're beating the other team by 37. You know,
Right, right,
they're just
and they're beating, and they're
annihilating teams that they're supposed to beat. It's really hard to measure what that means
and they're beating
because when
Matt
you go,
Rule and
what about when they
Nebraska.
go up against a team that they're even with, or they're maybe they're an underdog? We haven't
I don't
seen that
know.
yet.
I don't know, but you know what? I'd put my money on that coach. He's a really good coach. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I love the way he coaches.
Do I
He
like him
builds.
against Ohio State? No. But I guess we're going to see. They're just a great story. Let's see. Number one, Oregon dominates Michigan 38-17 as the Wolverines fall to 5-4. And Oregon just never looked like they had anything but control of this game.
Hey, back to the Indiana Michigan State. Did you know that Michigan State had negative 36 yards rushing?
No way.
Negative 36 yards rushing.
Wow. That's
And
crazy.
Indiana had 7 sacks and 2 INTs. Their
Hmm.
defense.
Yeah. So it's not
They're
just their
good.
offense. It's
They're
killing.
good on both sides of the ball.
Hmm. That's great.
When you're holding a team to negative 36 yards rushing, you have a stout defensive line.
Hmm. So any thoughts about the directions Oregon and Michigan are going? Obviously, they're going in diametrically opposed directions.
Oregon's super talented in all phases. Michigan is very good on defense and limited on offense. They have a real quarterback problem.
Hmm.
So I don't think it would take too much to fix Michigan, but I think the days of beating Ohio State every year are over.
Yeah. Yeah, they can't beat middling Big Ten teams right now.
You know who I think would be a really good matchup? Penn State and Michigan.
You think so?
Yeah, same kind of teams.
We'll see. I like Penn State in that matchup.
So
Think
do
they're a
I,
little.
but I'm saying running the ball, play good defense, keep it low scoring.
Mhm.
That's the style. It'd be like 12-9 or
Well,
something.
again, Oregon and Michigan are going in completely opposite directions in the Big Ten, and it's pretty wild to watch. You have this team that's just joined the Big Ten.
Yeah, but the
That's played.
question is Michigan sinking in perpetuity, or are they just down this year and they'll be back?
Oh, I think they'll be back. No, I'm not saying
Yeah, they'll be back.
permanently.
But will they get back to Harbaugh levels? No.
But this is a rebuild. It's not going to be overnight. This is
Yeah.
a rebuild.
Well, you could pick up a quarterback in the portal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Miami did. So
Yes, that's right.
right, absolutely. The next one we got Pitt embarrassed in blowout loss to number 20 SMU. And
Yeah.
nobody saw this coming. This was one that a lot of people had circled as one of the best games of the weekend. Both of them ranked. Pitt and SMU kind of battling for second place supremacy in the ACC and trying to get maybe a sneaky playoff position. And Pitt had been playing fantastic all year. They came in 7-0, and they get just absolutely decimated by SMU. SMU got 11 yards per carry or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts about this? And should we be taking SMU a little more seriously?
Absolutely. SMU can really pound you on the ground, and their defense really came up big with 3 sacks, a fumble recovery, and an interception. They look powerful and fast, and they have some big wins now. So SMU should enter the conversation. They might end up being the second best team in the ACC. They might be better than Miami.
Or better than Clemson.
And with Clemson falling,
Yeah.
who's to say SMU doesn't end up the number 1 ACC team?
Yeah, that would be crazy, but it's certainly possible now.
It wouldn't shock me. I'm not saying I'm predicting it. I'm not, but I still think Clemson's the best team, but they had a terrible week.
I don't know. They got 2 losses now. They have a bit of a problem getting in now, and you'll see why.
Yeah,
I'll
this
show
was
you.
a bad loss for them.
Yeah, they're going to have a problem getting in. Well, all I can say is SMU is really impressive. I don't think Pitt is completely out of it because they only have 1 loss, but boy, they're going back to the drawing board trying to figure out what the heck happened because they got blitzed. So
They got steamrolled.
So the next one is Clemson CFP hopes on life support after Louisville loss. And this was, I mean, we watched a lot of this game together. This was incredibly surprising to watch because it really wasn't close. I mean, Louisville controlled the game from beginning to end. Clemson had a couple nice plays, but like as they always do, but I never really felt like Louisville wasn't going to win this game. It's pretty wild. So what does this mean for Clemson's chances?
I think a lot depends on what happens in the ACC championship situation. Can somebody knock off SMU? Is Miami going to falter somewhere along the line? They need help now. It's not all in their control anymore.
That's right. I'd be interested to see Clemson up against a couple of these rising ACC teams to see how good they really are. I'm not sure how good they are now. I thought we knew because they had been really on a roll, but after they got rolled by Louisville, although you mentioned Louisville probably have the toughest schedule in the country.
Which one of these 3 do you think would play best against Oregon?
I still think it'd be Clemson
So do I.
or Miami. But any of these teams can beat anybody. And if you put SMU up against Clemson on any given Saturday, there's no reason SMU can't beat them, especially the way Clemson played last week.
I think SMU might match up best because they're the better. They're good on both sides of the ball. They have explosive offensive plays and they have good defense.
That's twice now Clemson's laid an egg, and clearly they can't lose again. They have to win out and win the SEC championship game to get in.
That's right.
So, but like you said, they need help. So we'll see. They need Miami to get a loss is what they need.
Yes.
Really badly.
And SMU too.
Let's look at the scores. We got Boise State taking care of San Diego State in a blowout fashion. They just keep rolling and rolling and rolling. The San Diego State coaching staff made a clear effort to try to take Ashton Genty out of the game, and they did largely, although he still got 140 yards rushing and 2
He had
touchdowns.
149 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's a
Right.
down game where they
It
concentrated on
was.
it.
It was. That means that they took him out of the game.
That's so funny.
And the quarterback for Boise was pretty impressive in this game, I thought.
Yeah. 4 TDs, no interceptions, 98 QBR. And Latrell Caples, the wide receiver, had 6 catches for 90 yards and 3 touchdowns. So
Mhm.
clearly they knew they were trying to take Genty away, and
Mhm.
they threw the ball a little more.
Right. They're impressive too. They're kind of like that SMU type team that's just rising and rising and rising every week.
Yeah.
Nobody can seem to beat him. He's
It's
not
kind
going
of
to be.
funny. I heard them saying that that Beck is the only holder on extra points and field goals. He's the holder. He's the only holder in the country who drives a Lamborghini.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah. Most quarterbacks don't hold anymore unless they're like the backup holder
Well,
because you
Tom
don't want
Brady
to
used
get
to be the holder for the Patriots, so yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Another upset. Minnesota takes out Illinois. Illinois loses 2 in a row.
That was
And
crazy.
this was a bad one because this was in front of the record all-time attendance record at Illinois. It was their home stadium. It was their homecoming game. They had all their alumni back, and they all expected them to win this game and to continue to drive towards the playoff. And instead, they get an incredible effort from Minnesota. A lot of people, prognosticators, have been picking Minnesota in this game. And Illinois' quarterback, again, has a subpar performance. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, Illinois is kind of a head scratcher this year. They're up and down pretty dramatically. Their quarterback fumbled twice in this game. Didn't play particularly well, but didn't have huge blunders other than that. But so it seems like Minnesota just kind of chipped away and held the ball and
Mm-hmm.
had a decent, efficient offense and kept Illinois off balance and sort of made him put the quarterback under pressure. And he made a couple mistakes, and that was just enough to get control of the game.
Next one was the game of the day. This was number 3 versus number 4. We've talked about this one in Happy Valley. Not a lot of scoring, epic defenses. The cornerback play you mentioned, I thought cornerback play was actually good on both sides of the ball. Both teams had really good defenses in this game. Ohio State just a little bit better with a little bit more NFL talent is what it felt like. I think the coaching matchup too. I've always wondered whether Day or Franklin was a better coach. I think Day and his staff definitely got the better of Penn State.
I
They
don't
were the
really
better.
think it was a coaching thing. I think it was a personnel thing. I don't think Penn State has enough horses on offense. And if you want to say that's coaching because it's recruiting, okay, fair enough. But it's not game day coaching.
So you think Penn State was never really the number 3 team in the country?
Never. No.
Okay. Yeah. This one was interesting. Tennessee,
Mm.
Kentucky. Kentucky gave them a pretty good fight, although Kentucky's had a very disappointing year, but really fought hard and actually had a 10-7 lead at halftime.
Mhm.
And again, Tennessee, for the 4th week in a row's offense was really struggling in the first half, like they have been for a while now. And then, as they always do, seem to pick it up in the second half and score a couple touchdowns and get the W. So, any concerns about Tennessee being kind of sluggish like they have been? I mean, when they come up against a really big-time, powerful team, are they going to be able to survive it?
I think they struggled in the first half a bit, and then they took control, running the ball, and then started to have more balance. And Iamaliva played a little better. So I don't think they look as good as they did in the very beginning, but I think they're better than they looked when they started to stumble. So that they're a solid team. I think 7 is probably about where they are in terms of talent, 7, 8, somewhere in there. And I think they're doing well. I think that Kentucky's a real good team. Their record isn't great, but they're a solid program.
So
And
still lined up for the playoff.
yeah, I think Tennessee is sitting okay.
Next one is the Clemson-Louisville game. The surprise there, of course, is that it was at Clemson, at Death Valley, and that Clemson really needed this one. They really couldn't afford a second loss and couldn't prevent it. And it really, like I said before, felt like Louisville had control of this game from beginning to end. So I don't know what this is going to do to Clemson's playoff chances. We're just going to have to watch and see if they can find a way back in or path back into favor with the CFB selectors. We'll see what happens to them. But very surprising result there.
Well, it's not entirely in their control, but they can control beating everyone from here, praying for a stumble of one of the other two teams, SMU and Miami, and then they're really just hoping to try and get into the ACC championship game.
And like you said, they don't control their destiny. They need Miami and
Right.
SMU to both lose, really. So the only two undefeated teams in the Big Ten are Oregon and Indiana.
Yeah.
Like no one would have picked that at the beginning of the year.
They looked
So
pretty
next,
vulnerable when their offensive line was banged up, though. So
true. So next game is Houston pulls off a stunning upset of Kansas State, who was trying to stay in the mix in the Big 12. Kansas State
yeah,
clearly the better team. Houston's having a really kind of lackluster year for them, but they were at home in front of their home crowd and found a way to get it done with 14 points in the fourth quarter to take this game down. And
yeah.
kind of a stunner, another upset out of the 5 big upsets. So, any thoughts on this one?
I mean, you and I were watching this at the brewery this weekend and at Lone Rider, and I don't know. Kansas State didn't feel like they were pushing them around enough. It felt like Houston was hanging around. So it's not surprising that they got the upset.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Kansas State just didn't score enough points. They usually score in the 40-point range.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened in this game. Maybe Houston just had a big, solid defensive effort, but Kansas State's going to be kicking themselves on this one because they really were in nice position, especially with Iowa State losing. They would have been the challenger to BYU, and then they dropped this game that just never should happen. Houston's just not that good. Upset Saturday continues to not disappoint.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's take a look at our winners and losers of the week. We got the Miami Hurricanes, clearly a winner, sitting at 9-0, atop of the ACC, looking really great. Starting to actually play some defense now. We got BYU that's now in the driver's seat in the Big 12. As long as they don't screw it up, they should be able to go all the way to the playoff. You got Boise State, which is now really nicely positioned to grab that number 12 spot as a group of 5 school. Their quarterback's playing great. They've got Ashton Genty, who will be on the stage at the Heisman Trophy Awards, looking really good. Oregon, of course, number 1 team in the country. We'd love to see them play one of those other big schools, and we probably will in the playoff. But just playing fantastic. Dylan Gabriel struggled the first 2 weeks of the year, and then ever since has been lights out. Indiana, of course, we've mentioned, same thing. Their offense has been high-powered, and now they're starting to play some defense. And then I put a couple extra schools in this week. I put in Vanderbilt, who continues to win and win surprisingly. They're not a joke anymore, and they're actually beating really good teams. And then we have SMU, which is completely surprising in the ACC. 5-0 in the ACC, 7-1 overall. Any problems you have with any of these winners of the week?
I've been on the Vandy bandwagon for a minute now. I love all these teams in terms of the seasons they're having are very special. Boise obviously finding other ways to beat you now, not just run Genty. So that's significant. SMU just demolishing good opponents. It's crazy. Indiana is beating people with defense and offense, and they get their quarterback back. BYU is quietly just leading their charge. Miami outscores the opponent no matter kind of how bad it looks in the late in the second half. So really, really good teams. And then Oregon doesn't seem to have a weakness. They might be the only team that doesn't have a flaw.
We haven't seen anybody push them around at all this year. Ohio State did score some points on them, though, but of course they have a great roster. But
Well, but they didn't look great in the first 2 weeks, and a lot of people feel like that was because their offensive line was banged up. So if they were to have some injuries, it could shake them up a little. But as of right now, they don't have any weaknesses. I don't know what you would attack or exploit.
That's true. Imagine if Dylan Gabriel was on Georgia. How good that team would be.
Yeah.
All right, losers of the week, we got Kansas State, which inexplicably dropped one to Houston. Just made no sense. They were really cruising. They're a really good team. Just one of those in-conference games that, happens sometimes. Got bit. Clemson, again, I know they played a good Louisville team, and Louisville has had a tough schedule and all of that, but if you're going to be a top 5 team, you got to be able to beat Louisville. It just didn't make any sense at Clemson.
Oh, yeah. That was crazy.
Iowa State, Luke's team, we've been texting with him a little bit the last 2 days. He's really sad, of course. Didn't make any sense how they could lose to Texas Tech, who's not good this year. Iowa State was in the control position in that conference and now is going to need some help to be able to get to the playoff.
That was disappointing.
It was. It really was. Texas Tech is not good, and Iowa State just had an off day, just how it is. A&M, I thought personally they were going to the SEC championship game. They're now on the outside looking in with this really bad loss to South Carolina that they really couldn't afford. You said that they have the uneven quarterback play, so maybe it doesn't surprise some people that they kind of got knocked around. But
I felt like they were headed for getting a lot of wins against not great teams, and then they were going to end up in a SEC championship game or something and get annihilated.
But
I kind of felt like that was going to be their waterfall they were heading towards. But now that they've lost one, I feel like expectations are calibrated down better to they're a very good team that has a little bit of flaws. Now you can kind of evaluate them properly.
But for them to give up 44 points, the quarterback doesn't play defense. And so that was very disappointing.
No, they got steamrolled.
Yeah, very disappointing. Next one is the Illini. They've been on this Losers of the Week 2 weeks in a row. Just the total head scratchers in terms of their last 2 performances. They had such a great season going, and all of a sudden their offense has dried up. So they'll probably just drop off this list because they're going to become essentially irrelevant in the Big Ten now.
Now and they're just a spoiler.
Exactly, yeah. And then Pitt, which had the big matchup against SMU. Nobody really knew who was going to win that game because they seemed evenly matched. And when the final score was shown up on the scoreboard, they were definitely not evenly matched. Pitt was clearly outclassed that day. Any thoughts on these 6? Any that you would add?
Florida State.
Well, I dropped them off because they're just irrelevant.
I know. I'm just kidding. I thought we were going to leave their slide permanently up there.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Pitt getting blasted by SMU was a little surprising. I didn't see that one coming. A&M, obviously struggling at the quarterback position, but also their defense got exposed a little bit. The Clemson loss was weird. Louisville's has a very good team and started the season ranked, and they've got some bad losses, some losses to really good teams, but they have a brutal schedule. But I think they're definitely going to win some big games. So Louisville's a tough competition.
Looking at the new top 25, I mean, every week we look at it's a little bit different, except for at the top. This week we got Oregon still at 1. We have Ohio State that has jumped into 2, Georgia at 3, Miami at 4, Texas at 5, Indiana all the way up to 6. And this is a team that started as the 44th best team at the beginning of the season. Has risen all the way to 6. BYU 7, Tennessee now drops to 8. The Penn State Nittany Lions go from 3 to 9. Notre Dame at 10. Bama's rising a little at 11. LSU. Iowa State drops down to 13 from 10. SMU and Boise State are both rising. And Ole Miss is rising. Ole Miss was sitting at 23 last week.
What do you think? What do you think would happen if Indiana played Alabama?
Um, in previous years, it would be a 35-point blowout. This year, I
Yeah.
don't think Alabama's defense is what it has been. And I think Indiana could get some running and passing going on them. Would Indiana win? I don't know. I'm not sure they could beat Alabama, but
That's what we don't know.
I think
That's
it'd
the
be a really
question.
close game. It'd be a really close game.
Hmm.
I'd point out Clemson's dropped all the way to 19. Army is sitting stout at 20. You've got Colorado also sitting down there on the bottom row with Vandy.
So
And even
Missouri's 18.
Missouri's 18.
There's no way Clemson should be below Missouri.
Ole Miss rising. Clemson, okay, so you'd switch those two. I'll tell you the first thing I'd switch on this that I don't agree with is I don't think Miami's a top 4 team.
No.
I think they're probably about 6 or something. I think Indiana's a little high here. 6 seems a little high for Indiana.
Yeah. They're about 10 or something. 9 or 10.
Agreed. Notre Dame probably a little bit higher.
Penn State's a little high. I think they're down more like 12.
Yep, I agree. I think if this continues the way Ole Miss is playing, they're going to end up rising up into that top 12. They're just playing fantastic. Otherwise, I don't really have much of a problem with this. Maybe Georgia and Ohio State, I might switch and put Georgia 2.
Yeah. I'll tell you, SMU might be higher than 14.
I'm still not sure about Texas either. I just don't think they're playing very well right now. They really,
Right.
if you look at who we thought they beat that were really fantastic, Michigan we thought was a great win. It's not. Oklahoma we thought was a fantastic win. It's not. So I need to see Texas actually beat someone big before I'm willing to put them up even as high as 5. I think they're 8 to 10, somewhere in there.
And Vandy might be higher than 24.
True. Very,
They
very
might
true.
be like 16 or something.
I got the picture there of the Ohio State Buckeyes because they've risen all the way to 2 after their big loss they had against Oregon. So I do think that, this is probably the top 10 right now. All right, let's look at the playoff odds right now. As of week 10, you see BYU has a 51% chance to get a college football playoff bid. The second highest chance in that division is Iowa State at 29. And you see their percentage of Big Ten title possibility as well. So Iowa State goes from 1 down to 2 as the possible bid for the college football playoff from the Big 12. Any problems with this order?
No.
Colorado
I
sitting with a 9.
might put Colorado higher than Kansas State in terms of what I think could happen.
Okay. I could see that. Both of them sitting with 2 losses right now. To me, they got about the same possibility of getting there, and I don't think they're going to make it. I think it's going to be one of those top 2.
I think Colorado is a better team.
Yeah. That's probably true. Looking at the ACC, Miami with a 96% chance, SMU 42, Clemson 29 after their second loss, and Pitt all the way down to 6% with only 1 loss, which I thought was kind of surprising. I mean, they're sitting on 1 loss and only 6% chance. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
It may just be based on how good SMU looked against Pitt. I guess that's what it is. Any thoughts here? It looks like 2 teams are going to go from the ACC. So is Clemson going to get left out?
I don't know. Depends on if Miami stumbles.
Mm-hmm.
Or if SMU stumbles.
They need one of these teams to lose.
Yeah.
And really, they probably would prefer SMU to stumble because then they'd have 2 losses.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks to me right now, if the season ended today, it'd be Miami and SMU, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Big Ten, you got Oregon with a 99%, Ohio State 99%, Penn State 88%, Indiana 87%. So you have they're thinking, 3 or 4 of these teams are going to go is what they're thinking. So Any problems with that one?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Those are the 4 best teams in the Big Ten, I think.
I might put Indiana higher than Penn State.
Maybe. Sitting at 9-0.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Still a little disrespect there, 10% Big Ten title. Still a little disrespect. I guess they think they can't beat those top 2 teams.
Yeah.
SEC, Georgia with a 92%, Texas 76, Tennessee 61, Bama 59, Ole Miss 21, LSU, Texas A&M coming up in the rear. And again, I think 5 teams will go. So if it were ending today, you'd have those top 5 teams all go, with Ole Miss at the 11 spot.
That's really because these teams all play each other, so they beat
Right.
each other up.
Did you notice they all have at least one loss for a
Yeah,
reason?
that's right.
Because,
There's
man,
no 8-0 in SEC.
it's
Doesn't
a
happen.
gauntlet. Yeah, it's an absolute gauntlet. I don't know. I might put Texas down a spot or 2. Again, I got to see him beat somebody. All right, let's go to our NFL football stories. We got Broncos report card. A no good, very bad day for Denver's defense in a blowout. What were your thoughts on that game? Made no sense coming into the game. They were playing so well.
Yeah, that was a pretty surprising game. But if you think about it, it kind of wasn't, because the Ravens really had a rough week last week, and their defense has been really maligned the last couple weeks. And I think they were just a really ticked off team. They were salty. And, Nick's he did what he could. 19 of 33, 223 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. But he had a receiving touchdown. Did you see that play?
I did. Incredible.
He basically Randy Moss the
He's
corner.
an unbelievable athlete. You realize that? I
He
had
is.
no idea Bo Nix was that good an athlete, but he did
Yeah.
not have a very good day. If you really look
He
at
didn't have a great day. No.
Baltimore's
Cortland Sutton had a nice day, but really the story was not so much the Broncos, but it was the Ravens.
Baltimore's defense had been kind of much maligned for a lot of the
They've
year,
been maligned.
and they're bad and all this kind of
They had
stuff.
4 sacks and an interception.
And then when I look at Lamar Jackson's weapons compared to what Bo Nix has to throw to,
Yeah.
it's not even the same league.
Derrick Henry had 23 rushes, 106 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's just a battering ram. And then Zay Flowers had 5 catches for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. And they even said they were going to try and take away Zay Flowers with their corners and just.
Yeah, but then he's got Mark Andrews, and then he's got it's just
I know.
They just have so much. Yeah.
And when Lamar's playing well, they're almost unstoppable.
I was wondering the last couple of weeks, the Broncos had been winning, but I was thinking to myself, they haven't really played a playoff team. They haven't played a really great team yet. I want to see.
Well, they played an angry playoff team. So
yeah. So
I just think,
they played a real team this week and they got blown out. So
yeah,
I think
they played hard. They got kind of steamrolled.
The Broncos are on the rise. They're going the right direction. They're not there yet. They probably need another draft or 2. Yeah.
They have the offensive line they're going to need, and they have most of the defensive pieces in place. And they have a young quarterback who's learning. They need somebody on the other side from Cortland Sutton, and they need a tight end.
Tight end, yep. And another running back.
Probably one more lineman just to make sure. And
another young running back, probably.
Running back, they still have some needs.
Yeah.
But I think they have really nice pieces in place. They don't need too many more drafts before they're super competitive.
No doubt. Well, let's talk about Lamar Jackson in this game. I mean, he looked really, really comfortable. He's been looking comfortable for a while now, other than his 1 week last week against the Browns, although he really didn't have a bad game there either. They just lost 29-28.
He was very efficient.
Thoughts about Lamar this year? Maybe could he win his 3rd MVP? I mean, it looks like it's possible.
I'll tell you, I've rarely been the biggest Lamar fan, but he's my fantasy quarterback, and I'm loving him. He is doing better. He only had a small number of yards rushing,
Mm-hmm.
which is great because you only want to use that when you need it, because it exposes him to danger. When he can be a pocket passer and he can pick you apart, that's better for the Ravens.
Well, isn't he proving more and more that he can be a pocket passer? I mean, that's what he's
Yeah,
proving.
yeah.
Yeah, that he can do it. I
And
think he almost.
Zay Flowers is a solid number one, and
Mhm.
he's a weapon. So
I think Lamar has a real shot at winning his third MVP. He's playing that well. He may be playing the best football of his career right now.
maybe,
You
but
know,
I will say this: when Derrick Henry's running effectively,
mm-hmm.
they're steamrolling people, and Lamar's not taking hits.
I mean, nobody can tackle him.
Nobody can tackle him.
It's insane. The guy
Yeah,
I've never seen a guy who's so tall and so big and so physical and yet so fast,
I know.
all in the same package.
And he loves contact. Like
He's
you
like
can't.
Marshawn Lynch, but he's faster. You know,
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. Next one is Chargers dominate on defense with 3 picks and 6 sacks in the win over the Browns. And the Browns looked so good last week, knocking off the Ravens, and then this week looked completely hapless and couldn't do anything. And the Chargers defense, it was definitely their best performance of the year, maybe the best performance in the last 2 years. They played so well.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can have a combination of the running game they already have, the quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over, and play this kind of defense, you're now starting to play playoff football.
Yeah. Well, it all starts with the running game because that takes pressure off Herbert, and then Herbert can be special when they're doing play action or when the defense isn't sure what they're going to do. So yeah, I mean, I think Harbaugh's philosophy is starting to take hold.
Mm-hmm.
They're physical. They don't make mistakes on you, and they're starting to play really good defense. 6 sacks,
Mm-hmm.
3 INTs. I mean, that's pretty solid.
It is. It is. Their combination is starting to get them into playoff shape. So it looks like beating a team that played really well last week.
It feels like Harbaugh's personality is on this team now.
Harbaugh ball. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh ball.
Mm-hmm.
Next one is McLaurin for Washington becomes the 10th player in franchise history to record 30 touchdowns. And you're talking about in his 4th season.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's already the 10th player to hit this milestone. And, they're already talking about if he stays for another 4 to 5 years, he's going to break every single record, all of Art Monk's records. He's just on an incredible pace. Had 2 more touchdowns today. Is definitely, the favorite target for Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
And another solid win by the Commanders. They go to 7-2. Any thoughts about the Commanders and generally about McLaurin as a receiver?
I just think that Jaden Daniels likes throwing to him more than the previous quarterbacks. He finds him open a lot. The Commanders look good in all phases now, whereas in the past few years, defense was a serious liability. Bobby Wagner got a fumble. Like they're working on adding to the defensive statistics.
If I went down all 32 teams, I listed off, okay, does this team have a number 1 receiver? Does this team have a number 1 receiver? I'll bet you 15 would be yes and 16 or 17 would be no. If you just really were objective about it.
Yeah.
But it's clear that Washington for the last 3 seasons has had a number 1 receiver. This guy is the definition of a number 1 receiver. And the teams that have one, they have an advantage,
You know what I liked about Daniels' performance? He's spreading the ball around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Ertz had catches. Sanat had catches.
Mm-hmm.
All
Mm-hmm.
the wide receivers had catches. I mean, Scary Terry only had 19 yards receiving. That's
He
because
throws
other guys were getting catches.
he throws wheel routes to Austin Eckler. He throws wheel routes to
Yeah.
B.J. Robinson. He throws. I mean, all these guys.
He's getting everyone involved. So it's a nightmare to
Yeah,
play defense against this
yeah,
team.
that's true.
Instead of always throwing it to Randy Moss or something, he's throwing it to this guy, then he's
And
throwing
by
it
the
to
way,
that guy,
that
and
makes
his tight end.
and by the way, that makes McLaurin better when you're throwing it to everybody else too.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I'm just so happy for the Commanders. Young leads Panthers to second win of the season, beating NFC South rival
Yep.
Saints.
Go ahead.
So I'm wearing my Panthers shirt because we finally got another win. I know you're wearing yours too. And I will say Bryce Young looked pretty good in this game. He spread it around. He didn't make mistakes like he usually does. He usually makes some really fatal mistakes.
I've
Chuba
been
Hubbard.
telling you to be patient with Bryce Young's development. He's going to take another 2 years probably.
Mhm.
But the fact that the Panthers made the mistake of giving up the farm to get him, that's done now. Like, that was a mistake. Picking him was not a mistake, but having to give up all that stuff was. So I just think he needs to be on the bench, occasionally coming in, getting his feet wet, playing a little bit, then going back to the bench and learning and learning and learning. And just, he needs to overcome his size challenge. So that means he needs to know more than everyone else in terms of defenses and schemes and
And
different cover looks.
I agree with that. And I think though the MVP for the Panthers this year is Chuba Hubbard.
Chuba Hubbard.
He's become a top 5 back in this league, and I never thought that'd be possible. This guy is
He's a battering ram.
He's getting 130 yards and touchdown or 2 touchdowns every game.
And they know
dependable.
it's coming. Like, there's no other weapons. So
He's so dependable. And then they've got 3 rookie wide receivers all starting now because they've shipped everybody else out. And all of them are really productive. It's been really cool to watch all 3 of these guys, young guys, but he's throwing the ball to them and they're productive. And so I don't know. I'm seeing some little shoots of grass coming up from out of the ground with this team. I also saw the defense that had been much maligned that everyone thought was going to be good this year make 3 huge stops in the second half against Derek Carr, which I didn't think they could do that either. I really was had semi-given up on this defense and was really encouraged that I saw that today, that they really were making some big stops, including bottling up, some of the running game from the Saints, which is usually really good. So I don't know. I was very pleased that we got a second win. We'll take it.
it was interesting. The Saints won almost every statistical category: time of possession, yardage, throwing, running. I think the Panthers played bend but don't break defense,
Mm-hmm.
and they held in certain spots.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the Saints were demoralized when Olave went down. That was a really scary moment for them.
I can see that. Yep.
And I think it shook him a little.
Well,
Watching him he had
do
to
you
go
know
off on a gurney or whatever. So
do you know the Saints are the first NFL team in history ever to start the season 2-0 and lose the next 7 games? They're now 2-7. So that's not really a record you want, but pretty remarkable.
They were getting a little overrated in the first couple of games, though.
2-0, and then they go 2-7. So I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do to get a win. I'm just glad that it wasn't against the Panthers. So next one is how
Kamara had a nice game though. 155 yards rushing and 60 yards receiving.
He did, but with Olave out and some of the other injuries they've had, I mean, he's about all they have too. He's kind of like Chuba Hubbard. He's like pretty much their weapon.
We had no answer for him.
House of Horrors, Texans are stung by injuries and lose to Jets. So this was a game that you could really tell how different C.J. Stroud and this offense is without their top 2 receivers. And, they just bottle up his one weapon he has left, which is his tight end. Their running game gets stacked up by putting 9 guys in the box. And they just can't do anything. And CJ Stroud's on his butt the whole day. Jets really turned it up both on offense and defense, and were able to pull this game out. Any thoughts about this game? Is this more about the Texans and their injuries, or is this more about the Jets are starting to gel and come together?
It's definitely both. I'm very impressed with the potential for the Jets receiving core. I think that it's probably the scariest tandem in football.
Garrett Wilson with some of his one-handed catches were
Yeah.
pretty astounding.
Yeah.
When you
Wilson,
guys watch the end of this video, I'm going to put in the highlights like I always do for college and pro games, and you'll get to see both of the one-handed catch touchdowns by Garrett Wilson. It's pretty amazing to watch. They were great
and
catches.
Devontae Adams had 91 yards and a touchdown. So you start to get that kind of production out of those two guys, and Rodgers is your quarterback. You're just praying that the offensive line can hold for a while.
And the defense actually had a good game finally.
And the defense got maligned for the last 3 weeks.
Right.
They had 8 sacks and a fumble recovery. They played amazing. So they put so much pressure on Stroud, and they played complementary football. The offense played nicely, and the defense came up huge, and they held the Texans, who are thought of as a playoff team, to 13 points.
So they're starting to come together.
I don't know about that.
Are the Texans going to be able to stay in the playoff chase with the number of injuries they have until these guys can come back? Because it's looking to me.
It looks like they're going to fall short, probably.
Yeah, because they can't seem to get any offense going without these two guys, especially Nico Collins.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. They just look like a completely different team.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas Cowboys season is on the brink of imploding. This was a headline out of the Dallas Star newspaper, as Dallas drops another one to the Atlanta Falcons. Did come back a little bit in the second half, but really never looked like they're going to win this game. So what are your thoughts? Is there anything Dallas can do as they're on this downward spiral?
I think they're overly reliant on their 3 stars. And Micah's been out. Dak is not playing well. And CeeDee Lamb is kind of the only guy who shows up every week. So they did everything they could to stop him.
And then as little a running game as they have, and they get Ezekiel Elliott.
Well, Lamb had 47 yards receiving. That's not going to get it done. And Ezekiel Elliott got in trouble.
That's what I'm saying.
Was left home and wasn't allowed to travel with the team. And it was disciplinary. So their locker room's a little bit of a mess. You saw their coach slam his iPad down. That's not good. He's not a very expressive person. So clearly he's just sick of losing.
Do you think he's lost the team?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Do you think Dak has lost the team?
Yes.
Okay. So, because you said you're not a big fan of firing in the middle of the season, and I'm not either. No. And by the way, I don't think Jerry Jones will fire him in the middle of the season. But would it surprise you if he's gone on the Monday after the season's over when they miss the playoffs?
Not at all.
Okay.
5 minutes after the season's over.
5 minutes. And then would it surprise you if they try to figure out a way to cut their losses with Dak and try to draft somebody?
I don't think they can.
So they're locked in.
They're locked in.
So kind of like with Tua with the Miami Dolphins, they can't really. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're just going to have to be mediocre for the next 3 years.
Yes.
Wow. Well, not a good thing for Dallas fans. Obviously, I love it because I despise the Cowboys. But if you're a Cowboys fan listening to this broadcast, I'm very sorry for your pain because it looks like it's going to go for a while. Now, I will say there could possibly bring in a new regime that could be offensive minded. It could be kind of quarterback whisperer.
I think the only way this team turns it around is if Jerry Jones turns being the GM over to an independent football guy who's brought in,
Because
and
they need a big draft. They really need a big draft
they
badly.
need a series of moves that puts them in a position to draft. So they'll have to get rid of some pieces. They'll have to trade some nice pieces, maybe even Micah
Or
Parsons.
CD, maybe CD.
I don't think they can afford to do CD. First of all, they paid him now. And second, he's their only offensive weapon.
Mm-hmm.
They've just driven it into the ground, just like New England did before Belichick left. He left the cupboard completely bare.
It's sad to watch. It is.
And that's what has happened here. Dallas has let the cupboard get completely bare.
So next one is Lions leave no doubt about NFC North superiority. So everyone was really excited about this game. They had circled it. It was the game of the day. Lions and Packers, NFC North. These are the two best teams in that division. And there was just no doubt from the beginning, opening snap, that the Lions were the better team. Of course, Love is a little bit banged up right now, but overall, whether it was driving rainstorm, whether it's a perfect day, I mean, Lions play in a dome, so you would think that the driving rainstorm would help the Packers, but certainly did not. The Lions run the ball better; they just do everything better, and certainly take control of that division and stamp their superiority on the NFC. I think they're the best team in the NFC and maybe in the football in general. Thoughts about this game?
I think they're the best team in football. And the driving rain didn't really deter them too much. Love was definitely hurt. They were talking about bringing in Malik. So I don't think it tells you very much. This game doesn't tell you very much. The conditions were so bad that it threw everything out of whack. And
Do you think when they play in the Lions Stadium later in the year, do you think the Packers can give them a game?
give them a game, yes. I think the Lions still win most of those games because they're the better team.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're the best team in football.
Don't you think they're also deeper?
Yeah.
They're just deeper. Yeah. Although I like the Packers roster, but I would love the Lions roster.
The Lions can beat you on both sides of the ball.
That's right. And have you seen any drop off at all after Hutchinson got hurt for the season? I haven't seen much. They have pressure.
A little bit, not too much, but they had 0 sacks in this game.
I don't know. They're still applying pressure. They're getting pressure.
They are pressuring, but I think there's a tiny bit of drop off for sure.
Maybe.
But they're so deep that and wide, like they come at you in so many different ways that one player doesn't make the Lions.
Right.
But did you see some of the blocking?
Yeah.
Some of the holes they were opening up?
And Jahmyr Gibbs is so good.
Gibbs.
They just have such an incredible Montgomery.
They showed some of the holes that were being created, and it was
Armand St. Brown. I mean, Goff is playing so well. He's got Laporta going.
Laporta.
Oh man, I don't want to.
Two-headed monster running back.
I know. So next one was an epic game that finished up right before we came on the broadcast, and that was
incredible.
The Rams overtime game against the Seahawks with Demarcus Robinson having a career day with multiple touchdowns and a career game-winning 39-yard touchdown where it had a one-handed catch.
It was incredible.
The defender was actually pinning his other arm back.
Yeah.
So he had to catch it one-handed, and it was an incredible play.
It was.
Perfect throw by Stafford. So any thought about this game? It really felt almost like a playoff game. These two.
That was one of the games of the weekend right there.
They're vying for NFC West supremacy, and now the Rams. I can't believe it, but they're in first place in the NFC West because the 49ers have been kind of faltering.
I thought they were going to be second and make the playoffs, so it's not too surprising.
Yeah, so
I still think they might end up second to the Niners.
And did you see who? Did you see who was in the lineup? Cooper Kupp was in the lineup.
Yes,
Nakua was in the lineup.
Yeah, but Nakua got thrown out.
I know that, but I'm saying my point is they were winning without those
Yeah.
two guys, and now those guys are on the field.
Yeah,
And
but they're
so
much better with those two guys.
I know. And then they have this great running back that nobody's ever heard of that is really coming on this year. I don't know. Rams are pretty good. They're pretty good. Got good coaching. Stafford's playing well.
Yeah.
It was an exciting game. Seahawks are good too.
I think it's amazing that Demarcus Robinson is their third best receiver.
Right. Exactly.
And he's like one-handed catching touchdowns to win games. And
I know. And the cries for an unprecedented decision get even louder for the Bears after getting entirely outclassed by the Cardinals. So this comes down to, Eberflus, and a lot of people thought he should have been fired last year and seemed to kind of save his job this year when they went on a 4-game winning streak with their rookie Caleb. But against all those games they won were all one-win teams. Now that they've played 2 weeks in a row against really good teams, they've lost both games, getting blown out.
that's what I've said.
And now apparently Eberflus has been called into the owner's office on Monday morning. I wonder what that conversation is going to be. Any thoughts about the Bears and how they're kind of imploding?
I don't think they're imploding. I think just they got overhyped because there was excitement around the pick. I think they made a mistake by getting rid of Fields, using up their draft capital to take basically Fields Part 2 and not upgrade the team's weaknesses. They've put in place some nice pieces for sure, so they've helped themselves a little bit. But they could have traded that pick for Joe Alt or something,
Mhm.
They could have traded to
Well,
get
and
linemen.
do you know who they were raving about today in the Lions game? And I was thinking about you because you always are a huge proponent of Penny Sewell.
Penny Sewell, yeah.
And he was just pancaking people today and opening
I know.
huge holes. And I was sitting there thinking, Rob was always talking about like a Joe Alt for the Chargers, or like how big it is to have a huge, reliable left tackle you can plug in for 10 years. Look at what,
It doesn't have to be left tackle. Penny Sewell plays right tackle.
Look at what the 49ers have with Trent Williams. This guy's just an absolute beast.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Harbaugh, I agree with Harbaugh. He says incredible offensive linemen are weapons. And that I totally agree with that.
He looks at him as an offensive weapon, Joe Alt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he sees Alt as a weapon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I agree. If you get the top guys, you have to get like one of the top 3 linemen every year. That's a weapon. You can't just think of him as some throwaway pick. So
I mean, they call them the hog mollies for a reason.
Well,
that's where the battle is, right?
You see so many examples where you have teams like the Bears that have great skill position players, but because defenses are rushing, they can't show off their skills.
Mm-hmm. So next one is the Dolphins score a lot, but defense cannot stop the Bills' offense as the team falls short. So this was a really good game.
Mm-hmm.
Bills had to win it on a last-second field goal, but the Dolphins looked the most like they did last year this entire season in terms of their offense. They were touchdowns to Waddle, all kinds of great plays in the running game. Tua looked comfortable. What are your thoughts about this? It seemed like kind of maybe a turning point of the season for the Dolphins. Not that they'll make the playoffs, but
I think so. I think when you put Tua back in there, the sum of the parts look better. I think defensively they played tough. They had a nice pick, but I just don't think they quite have enough. I kind of overestimated them, but only because I assumed their defensive replacements for all the talent they lost were going to be better than they've been.
No, but you said though it was an unknown. You did say it was an unknown. We had a lot of pieces coming in, and I think they're going to be better, but I don't know. That's what you said.
I knew that the defense was an unknown.
Yeah. And now we know that they're not very good.
And that's been generally the disappointment.
Yeah.
Offensively, we've been disappointing, but that's predictable. If you lose your starting quarterback, only a handful of teams will survive those games. Some will do fine, like the Steelers, or there's a handful of teams that'll be fine, but most teams would go down. Could you imagine Cincinnati without Burrow? Could you imagine the Ravens without Lamar?
So
The
now their
Bills
offense,
without Josh Allen? Most teams would collapse.
is back, but now they're going to have to outscore everybody, it's really tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. But I'd like to see them start gelling and playing better, so that maybe next year we set up something that looks a little better than what we've seen
start
this
winning
year.
some games. You watch. They'll start winning some games because they can score now. So these are the power rankings in the NFL right now. I want to get your take on these. You got Detroit sitting at 1, Kansas City 2, Buffalo 3, Baltimore 4, and Washington 5. Do you have any problem with any of these 5?
No, generally those are about right. They're the top 5. And if you play with the order a little, maybe, but it's fine with me.
I might switch Buffalo and Baltimore.
Yeah.
I'd probably put Baltimore number 3. And then Bills and Washington are kind of interchangeable, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Really good quote here I thought was interesting. At some point, the Cowboys need Dak Prescott to play like an elite quarterback. Way too many poor performances from him this season. Do you think that's dead on, or is this more about he just doesn't have much around him? I don't know. Or is it both? It might be actually he's not playing well and they don't have much around him.
He's not playing well because they don't have much around him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about all the other teams. The Commanders have multiple weapons. The Eagles have multiple weapons. The Giants are starting to develop a couple. And he has CeeDee Lamb. That's it. That's all he has. He has one guy he can throw to.
So then is this an accurate criticism or is this off the mark? Because this criticism is saying we need him to start playing like an elite quarterback.
It's a good criticism because they pay him the salary of the guys that he would have to make his team better. But because he has to get paid like that, his team can't afford stars.
Mm-hmm.
So because they had to pay CeeDee Lamb and they're trying to.
So is it possible to play like an elite quarterback in his situation, I guess is my question.
Yeah, it's possible. He needs to overcome the lack of talent, and he can't do it. So that's why he's not worth $60 million.
So he's a bottom half of the league quarterback. He's getting paid
I'd say middle. He's right in the middle. He's 16th or 17th.
Okay. And he's getting paid like top 5.
He's getting paid like top 5.
Yeah. So MVP odds through midway of the season. You've got Josh Allen this is in Vegas, by the way. You got Josh Allen sitting at top along with Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, Jared Goff, Jaden Daniels sitting in 5, Jalen Hurts, and Brock Purdy. Those are your top 7. Any thoughts about this order? Do you have any problem with any of these?
I mean, I think Allen's too high, but I'd put Allen above Goff.
Okay. Who do you have number 1 then, Lamar or Mahomes?
I'd probably say Lamar.
Okay.
Because the Chiefs are really winning with defense mostly.
Do you think Jaden could really rise that high, or is it more rookie of the year possibility?
I think it's rookie of the year for him.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I put in here the report you were talking about. Multiple players have been telling their agents they want to be traded to the Commanders because of the team's new culture, their record, and their superstar rookie, Jaden Daniels. And that's from Adam Schefter. So this is what we talked about earlier. You have really bad teams. It's hard to get free agents want to come to you. I don't have any problem with this MVP listing other than I'd put probably Lamar and Patrick ahead of Josh and put Josh third. So I agree with you there.
Mm-hmm.
Major League Soccer round one. We've got the New York City FC tied 1-1 with FC Cincinnati. So that series is tied 1-1. Really good series. The Atlanta United beat Inter Miami yesterday to tie it up 1-1. This was a huge surprise.
That was surprising.
Everyone thought that Messi would be cruising to victory in that first round series. You got Minnesota won in penalty kicks against Real Salt Lake and won the series 2-0. So Minnesota's on to the next round. My Charlotte FC won in penalty kicks. They had a 0-0 tie. And you see the picture there of Kalina on the bottom left. He's their goalie, and a lot of people think he's the best goalie in MLS right now. So Charlotte is tied with Orlando City and will play the rubber match on Thursday. So it'll be a big, cool thing to watch. You have the LA Galaxy easily winning their first round series, 4-1 in the second game. So they're on to the next round. They're one of your picks for the final.
Mm-hmm.
And then got the Seattle Sounders also won in penalty kicks, leading that series 1-0. They'll play tomorrow in their second game against Houston. And then finally, the Red Bulls won in penalty kicks today and knocked off the Columbus Crew. This is the defending champs from last year.
Mm.
And they've now knocked them out of the tournament, and the Red Bulls move on to the second round. Any surprises on any of these other than that one?
The Miami one losing to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
That was very surprising. And then all these penalty kicks, super exciting. They can go any which way.
It surprised me that 4 of these 7 went to penalty kicks.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about my boy Kalina?
Doing great. Keep going.
Mm-hmm. He saved 3 of the 5, which is always impressive.
He's a good goalie.
He's 6'4", so he's got really a reach.
Yeah.
So we're ready for your mailbag segment, Robbie. What do you think of this?
There you go.
You like it?
I like that one.
Yeah, I'm always looking for the best ones I can find.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Just got a couple today. We play of the year. Watching this live is unreal. It was about the Hail Mary heard around the world, and I didn't understand. It was at Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
At Ruth 556. I wasn't sure if they were saying they watched it live, like in the stadium, or they watched it live on TV, like as it was happening. I didn't know which one she meant, but play of the year. Do you think that's the play of the year so far?
I do. I personally do. That was the most exciting play. The fact that he was running around for 14 seconds, found a little tiny pocket he could throw in, threw it to the perfect place for it to be tipped. You know, you're not sure if it'll work or not, and happened to bounce back to the guy who was just standing there to win the game. You know, you could hear the broadcasters going crazy, the whole fans going crazy, the Bears in total shock. I do. I think it was the play of the year, for sure.
Yeah, I do too. It was so exciting. We broke that down pretty well in terms of how many mistakes were made and how there were strategic blunders and there was a lack of focus and all that.
And guys taunting the crowd and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Washington did everything right, you know, and that was pretty cool. So, Texas has been badly overrated for 2 years. They beat Michigan, who's not a top 30 team all year, realistically. And last year, if they play Bama after week 5, they're in trouble. So that was at Egan 843. I'm starting to hear that a lot of places about Texas being overrated.
I feel the same way.
It's an interesting concept. I know that you're starting to feel that way a little bit.
I feel the same way. Yep.
Why do you think
I
they're
agree.
overrated?
I just think that when they play a really solid team with a great defensive line, Ewers just folds. He just can't. He can't. He has no escapability. He can't really roll out. He collapses in the pocket. If I were Texas, and it's hard to do, but I would make the switch to Mr. Manning, Arch Manning, and he's more athletic and he's your future. But I know they won't do that because Ewers is the big senior and he's the one who's going to the NFL next year. So I know they won't do it, but that's what they should do. I think
Mm-hmm.
Arch Manning is the better option. It gives you escapability, gives you running ability, gives you the chance to actually pick up first downs with his legs. May not be quite as good a thrower as Ewers right now, but I think that when you get into the playoffs and you're playing the big teams, you need someone who can squirt out of there and extend the play. And I think it gives you a better chance.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel. And then I think also their defense is very good, but I think when they play a really solid offense, they're going to struggle. So I don't even put Texas in the top 5 teams right now.
I think they have a lot of players on offense too who can help Ewers. He's good at dumping the ball off and just getting it
Yeah.
going into the right direction. Little dump offs and the player takes off. So I still think they're really dangerous. I just think that you saw some flaws in them when they got beat, but I don't know.
They're definitely good. But I don't think they have as good a running game as they had last year with Bijan Robinson. I don't know. They're good. They're top 10, not top 5. That's what I'd say.
Loving this deep dive into Power 4 conferences at Megan Brown.
Oh, very good.
That
Thank
was
you,
from
Megan.
our college football playoff Power
Thank
4.
you, Megan. Yeah, that was a great episode. We had my friend Luke on, who's a friend of the program, and he did a great job helping to break down, especially the Big 12, which Rob and I don't know as much about. So that was a really good episode. I really enjoyed that. I'm glad you did too.
Mm-hmm. And that's it. Keep them coming. Keep the comments coming so we can talk about them. I was reading an article about how good the kicking has been in the NFL this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. The average kick is 40.2 yards. It's the longest average since 2000. And kickers have converted 73% of field goals of 50-plus yards. So 73% versus 71.6 in 2022. So kicking is up, especially long field goals, which is interesting. So I think Jeff Reed would think that that's exciting.
He would like that. He would like. Although when we asked him on that NFL kickoff episode at his bar, he said that he thought there was about 10 good kickers in the NFL right now, and the rest are just okay.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting. And he thinks actually the art of kicking is slowly fading, even at the college level. He thinks a lot of the kickers are just real average, and
Maybe.
he's a little distressed about it. He thinks that we need to pick it up from a kicking perspective. Of course, he's one of the greatest ever, so
Right.
he's looking at it from that perspective.
But also maybe this year is just slightly better than expected too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe their coaching is helping them along a little bit with some of
When
these
we asked
longer.
him who's the best in the game, I thought he was going to say Harrison Butker, but I don't think he's even in his top 3. He thinks Justin Tucker is by far the best kicker in the league.
Which
right
is
now.
interesting because Tucker's missed a bunch of kicks this year.
Yeah.
So
he had a lot of reasons.
It's an up and down game, man. That kicking business.
It is. It really is. Well, guys, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. We got a lot of great content coming your way. Coming up this week, we got a preview on the NHL and NBA seasons that have just gotten underway. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to really dive into the NHL first and then the NBA and kind of which teams we think are the ones to watch out for. And so watch for that episode. And we have another couple great episodes coming your way. We have another Strange and Cool Sports Part 2 coming up in late November, which you guys really enjoyed the first one with us. So we're looking forward to the second episode of that. You guys have a great night. We'll see you next time on the Sports Guys. See you.
See you.